Welcome to Joint Session, Diverse Voices in New York State Cannabis. I'm Herb Barbot, former and first Director of Operations at the New York State Office of Cannabis Management. This podcast brings together policymakers, regulators, licensees, advocates, and industry leaders to talk through the realities of building a cannabis market in New York and what those lessons might mean beyond the state. In Season 3, we continue the conversation while we celebrate the 5th anniversary of the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act. We look at how policy translates into practice and how practice may impact policy. Through it all, businesses must navigate change, all while trying to prepare for where the industry may be headed next. We aim to bring you thoughtful, candid discussions about what's working, what's evolving, and what still needs to be figured out. Thanks for joining us, and now here's the episode. I'd like to welcome Adam Goldner, co-founder and executive director of We Grow NYC. Adam is a longtime New York City public school educator, and as co-founder of We Grow NYC, is committed to the premise that grow knowledge should be readily available and never a barrier, whether in New York City or beyond. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you for having me. Great to be on.
Well, thank you for making the time. So New York's Cannabis Control Board formally approved home cultivation regulations in June of 2024. Now, before we get into the work that you're doing with We Grow New York City, please tell us what the home grow rules are in New York State.
Sure. So within New York State, residents are allowed to legally cultivate 6 plants per adult, up to 12 per household. And so that actually can produce a significant amount of products if folks are able to do that correctly. And the work that we're doing is really geared around providing and sharing information and tools and resources to set folks up for success to be able to do that well.
All right. So now you spent over 20 years as a New York City public school educator. How did you end up becoming an expert on growing cannabis at home? Was there a moment where those two worlds clicked for you?
Yeah, I think I've always had a passion for teaching and learning in general. I got into education because I truly love empowering people, and there's a really incredible feeling that comes when somebody has that aha moment and truly understands something. So for me personally, I learned to cultivate my own a few years back, and it, like anything else, I learned through trial and error. I learned to rely on external supports and to seek out information, and I found that when I dialed it in and when I was able to figure things out and do it well, I produced a quality product. And We Grow New York City was really built around the premise that others can do that as well with the right support.
Now, you've described the COVID pandemic as a time when you began encouraging others to also cultivate at home, and you recognize the deeper need for self-reliance, practical skill building, and community connection. Can you walk us through what that period looked like for you?
Certainly. So I have 4 children, and my son, who's currently 18, has medical needs. And so when the COVID pandemic hit, we were very clearly concerned, and we wanted to make sure that above anything else, he was protected because he had, he was immunocompromised. And so we shuttered in, transitioned to working remotely, and stayed remote for some time, all as a means of protecting my family and ensuring that they had opportunities. And during that time period, a group of literally dads, myself included, we formed an organization called Fathers Love, Fathers Heal, where we convened virtually, and we essentially just started conversations around mechanisms to support our families, healthy routes, ideal strategies to keep sane in everything that was happening, and to really pursue healthy practices that would help uplift our families and, to be honest, avoid a lot of the hefty costs that come increasingly at the grocery stores. And I grew up in Brooklyn. I didn't have much property or space growing up myself. I've spent the entirety of my life in New York City, and so I never really got into plant care or growing my own produce and crops until I had a property of my own in Staten Island where I had the space to do so. And I learned during that time how to till the earth, how to pursue organic gardening methods, and really the benefits to a lot of those facets of that work as well. And I did with my kids. We put our hands in the dirt constantly. My children and I dug a hole in the ground and made a koi pond at one point during the pandemic. But really around the urban gardening and growing your own, we significantly learned to enjoy growing our
Mm.
own produce. And to be honest, biting into a tomato that we grew in the yard versus a store-bought product, there's no comparison. The tomato from the yard was
Mm.
much richer in flavor and much firmer and just all around a better experience. And I learned,
What's better, the cannabis or the tomato?
oh, definitely the cannabis. But it's not like I'm sharing that with my children. Not yet, at least. My oldest is 20, so she's right there. But the product is very similar in that regard as well, because home cultivation of cannabis, as I mentioned before, I learned how to produce a quality product that blows the products away that are on the shelves at the legal retail dispensaries. And not to say that everyone is going to be capable of doing that, but I think with the right tools and the right support community and the right mechanisms, it's certainly attainable.
Is that dad's group still active?
Uh, so the entire group of Fathers of Fathers Heal kind of morphed into what is now the board of We Grow NYC.
Oh, terrific.
So we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and it's the same group of dads that have kind of held strong to this vision. And we've expanded. We've added some additional board members, and have certainly our work has taken on different forms in the past year and a half. But it's the same group.
So what pushed you to formalize that group? What was that process like?
I wanted to combine, to be honest, I wanted to combine my passions.
Mm.
I have a passion for education. I think that education unlocks many pathways for our society and uplifts and empowers communities in ways that are needed. And I wanted to take that and combine it with my passion for home cultivation, simply around the mantra that others can do it as well. Personally, as a public school educator, it's not like I was able to have dialogues often with people around
Mhm.
what I was doing and how to do it. And prior to the legal
Mhm.
capacity to grow your own, these conversations were frowned upon. And
Yeah.
so I relied heavily on YouTube University. And like anything else with YouTube, you have to know exactly what it is that you're looking for.
Mhm.
You have to run your search for a particular idea or question or concept or whatever it might be. And I found that to be challenging because not only, I knew what I was looking for sometimes, not always,
Mhm.
but it doesn't mean that others would as well. And so I wanted to found We Grow NYC as a mechanism to bridge those gaps and to provide and share this knowledge as openly and accessibly as possible.
So what does it mean to you now that home grow is a legally protected right in New York State?
I think it's incredible. I come from parents who smoked marijuana during the 60s and 70s and were persecuted for it. And personally, I've been arrested as a youth and even as a young adult, I've been in trouble with authorities for the use of cannabis. And I think now with folks having the ability to legally cultivate their own, it's incredible. And I truly hope that more people not only understand that they can do it within the legal boundaries in our state, but that they
Mhm.
have the capacity to do so as well, and that they don't have to go at it on their own, that there are support networks available, that there are resources, and that there are,
Mhm.
there are communities that really look to help empower others to grow their own because it opens up many options and pathways.
Right. So now, your vision for We Grow NYC centers on the idea that urban growers shouldn't be limited by space or access to quality resources and support. Now, that's a real challenge in New York City, obviously, small apartments, relatively few yards, landlords, building rules. What does overcoming those barriers look like in practice when you're working with community members who want to grow their own?
It's a great question. So I think a good example would be to include that our approach has sort of snowballed in recent years, and we do a lot of home cultivation workshops at legal retail dispensaries across the five boroughs. And these workshops are held in partnership with the dispensaries, those that, they want to contribute to their community and uplift and empower folks and really bring education to the forefront of their practices. And our workshops are designed not to steer anybody toward a particular method like hydroponics or aeroponics or what have you. We can certainly make our recommendations, and I have no problem sharing with folks that personally I feel a living soil approach is going to be the most ideal. But we really try to foster a sense of the fact that everybody can approach this and that we share the questions with them that they have to consider. Things like, what is your cost? How much time can you dedicate to this? What does your space look like? And what kind of conversations do you need to have with your family and your community? Because you're going to be growing and cultivating a plant that has an odor to it, that has a stigma attached to it, that has that's going to require some attention, money, and care. And so again, our approach is pretty open-ended when it comes to that. We try to get people at the very least when they're considering starting this process or they're curious, or even if they've already started, how to consider the various factors that are involved so that they're
Mhm.
best prepared to start.
Now, how did you decide to make dispensaries, a key venue for this type of workshop, right? Because to me, you would think that the home grow is kind of a competition for dispensary.
And believe it or not, I've heard that from some dispensary owners, right? Like some folks have come back at me and said, "Why would I want my clients knowing how to grow? It's going to detract from my business."
Right.
I found from personal experience and through many dispensary owners and teams that that's not necessarily the case. Instead, when somebody is growing their own, they have a better understanding of the variety of options that exist when you walk into a dispensary, and they're able to hopefully navigate better an understanding that goes and moves beyond just a simple what is the THC percentage, or is it an indica, sativa, or hybrid? Those are boundaries that truly don't define the plant. There's
Hmm.
much more detail to how this plant interacts with our bodies. And when somebody is, literally hands in the soil and cultivating their own, they do form somewhat of a connection with the plant, and they gain an understanding of what it takes to cultivate it, how the plant manifests itself in various ways throughout the entire grow process. And ultimately, when they, I cultivate my own, and I still walk into dispensaries all the time to buy things because I enjoy a variety, and I like to keep on top of like what's new, what's good, who's cultivating something that's really great, and how do I go and enjoy that product.
Now, how do you make sure that the organization is reaching people who aren't already plugged into the cannabis community? People who might be curious about, where to begin.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So we're a nonprofit organization, and we started very grassroots here in Brooklyn, New York, and have our presence and footprint in the city has certainly expanded and continues to do so. And
Mhm.
we've garnered a lot of really valuable relationships and partnerships through the process. And so we're partnering with other nonprofit organizations who prioritize community development and empowerment. We're building out workforce development pathways so that we're able
Mm.
to train folks and give them the skills needed to enter the green and cannabis industries in the
Mhm.
city and throughout the state and hopefully even beyond. And we wrote, when we go into a dispensary for the first time, I have dialogues with the owners around your customers may not know us and your customers may not have an understanding of what it is that we're doing. And so here's some resources. We share a one pager that they can print and put at their checkout.
Mm.
We have signage that they're welcome to display, and we encourage conversations with their staff, their bud tenders who are customer facing, to be able to talk about, say, hey, we're going to have a home cultivation workshop in the shop. Why don't you come on by? Here's what you'll learn. And so we really rely on continuously building out a community to help further promote and share these ideas.
Now, you come from a background in education and social justice advocacy. When you look at home cultivation as a policy issue, what's the argument you want more people in New York to understand about home grow, and what could OCM be doing to better promote home grow?
I think I'm not sure what the state could do, to be honest, and I think that the state would benefit from promoting more educational resources and putting, the expression "put your money where your mouth is," but kind of putting some financial backing behind educational momentum so that folks are able to gain access to valuable educational products. Personally, I feel that everyone benefits from growing their own. Now, it's not going to be for everyone. I recognize that there's always going to be folks that don't have the time or want to dedicate the energy or resources to home cultivation, and they're content with buying products, and that's okay too. But at the bare minimum, I firmly believe that just having the understanding of what it takes to cultivate this plant changes your mindset. And if we're talking in terms of the grand scope of things, we have a better society if folks have that understanding.
Yeah, in my experience is people who do home grow are really passionate about what they grow.
Yeah, yeah, you get to have a lot of pride in what you've produced, even if you make mistakes, and it will happen, right? I think I've scrapped multiple grows, and whether it's a mold issue or a pest issue or I messed up on the dry and cure or whatever it is. There's so many variables that can go wrong, and it happens. But I think, like anything else, we have to fall before we can walk. And so, it's part of the learning process, and hopefully we're able to figure things out and continuously improve.
Well, thank you, Adam. Where can people find out more about We Grow NYC? If they want to contribute the next workshop, how can they reach you?
Absolutely. Awesome. So our website is simple. It's www.wegrownyc.org. And we can be found on social media platforms by simply looking up We Grow NYC, all one word. So it's WEGROW
All right. Well, thank you, Adam Goldner, co-founder and executive director of We Grow NYC. Thank you for your time today. That's it for this episode of Joint Session, Diverse Voices in New York State Cannabis. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps more listeners find the show. In addition, please share this episode with colleagues, advocates, and anyone interested in the state of cannabis in New York. Joint Session is produced by me, Herb Barbot, together with executive producer Robert Curtis from Simlev. You can follow Joint Session on Instagram at jointsession.pod, on Blue Sky at jointsessionpod.bsky.social, and on LinkedIn at Joint Session Podcast. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions on topics, reach out to me at herb.jointsession@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Herb Barbot. Thank you for listening.